going to wait till some people show up here because I have a statement for our government and education minister, who's now taken to sending out veiled threats. And that needs to be responded to. Hey, Ed. How you doing, Ed? Stick around, Ed. I've got some choice words for our education minister, since he seems to have been talking indirectly about myself and some of the people I'm working with that are doing these talks across British Columbia. He seems to want to threaten us and demonize us. And I'm not the type of person who'll just sit back and do nothing when he does stuff like that, or anybody does stuff like that. I think that these people have figured that out by now, but perhaps they require a reminder. Okay, so I think maybe what I should do is get to my statements. Part of it's going to be prepared. I'm going to try to read from it, because this is very serious what's just happened here the other day. So we had our Minister of Education, Rob Fleming, say to the news some very disturbing comments the other day. I was asking earlier if anybody remembered the tough guy Robert Conrad from back in the 70s and stuff. I'm not sure if it was him, but I'm pretty sure it was him back in the 80s, this tough guy. Well, one of the things he implored to fellow tough guys is that one of the things you had to do was never let them see you sweat, right? That's how you were to be a good tough guy, never let them see you sweat. Well, I think what's happening here is that we're seeing Rob Fleming and other people in government beginning to sweat. Okay, so they look at the protest that was in Richmond the other day, which was erroneously reported by News 1130 as featuring dozens of people. It was hundreds of people that were at that protest, and a strong sentiment opposed to the implementation of the SOGI resources in the schools in Richmond. And there was a lot of strong opposition to that. And so, yeah, I think we're beginning to see the government sweat. So what happened was the following day, yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday, Rob Fleming came out and basically implied that people who are out in the public giving talks, such as myself and the people that I'm working with, are actually risking or treading very close to breaking the law, in his opinion. Okay, so he's saying to people like me that, well, first of all, he's implying that I'm spreading misinformation and I'm not telling the truth and stuff, right? And so he's saying people like me are right on the brink of breaking the laws in BC, implying that maybe we might be arrested or something for doing these talks around the province. Well, Mr. Fleming should probably take a moment to talk to Morgan Auger, because if he spends some time talking to Morgan Auger, what he'll tell him about me is that I'm not going to back down to threats like that, okay? I'm out there speaking the truth, right? And I will keep on speaking the truth, and I don't care who threatens me with what, okay? I don't care who threatens me with what. This is important. And the truth is something that needs to be spoken, and it needs to be shared with as many people as possible, okay? Our government has not been sharing the truth with people. They have been doing the opposite. They have been deliberately manipulating and deceiving the people, right? So they're doing things like they will say that nobody in the schools is teaching boys that they can be girls. Well, yes, they are. They most certainly are, and I can prove that, right? And then we get Glenn Hansman, the BCTF president, going on the evening news, and somebody asks him if teachers are being told not to use the words boys and girls in class. And he says, oh, no, I've never heard of anything like that. Well, yes, you have, Glenn. You've heard of that, absolutely. And it happens to be in the SOGI resources. In a section called Using Inclusive Language, they tell teachers that they should avoid using the words boys and girls. Now, why you would want to do something so stupid, because it doesn't matter if you look at a classroom that's full of boys and girls, even if some of the boys are wearing dresses, they're still boys. Even if you want to get into this sort of brain game where you think that when they change their clothes and put on makeup and stuff, their sex magically changes. Well, it doesn't matter, because the classroom is still going to be comprised of boys and girls, nothing but boys and girls. There's nothing in between. So why are they telling teachers not to use boys and girls, right? It's because they're playing mind games out there. So the government, Glenn Hansman, the BCTF, these are the people who are lying and deceiving and manipulating the public and need to be exposed. Maybe Mr. Fleming needs to be subjected to criminal charges for breach of public trust. How about that? That's my alternative. Now let me just go to my sort of written portion of this statement. So Rob Fleming is suggesting that we are out there saying things that are untrue. Okay, so if what I'm saying is untrue, then, Mr. Fleming, I invite you to come out and attend one of my public talks, and please point out exactly what I'm saying that is untrue. Somehow I doubt that you have the courage to do that, because those pushing deception and lies are always terrified by the truth. I understand that you are not interested in the facts. You are interested in pushing the agenda of whoever is driving this madness behind the scenes, be that social engineers or big pharmaceutical companies or a collection of many such vested interests. I don't know. But ultimately, I should say that I understand, Rob, that this isn't your fault. Soji 123 was the devilish spawn of the Liberal government before you, and the NDP just picked it up like a muddy football and carried it into the end zone. But the problem is that now you're using intimidation to try to silence opposition. Now, while you may have at your disposal the power of the police and the truncheon, I and those I've been working with have at our disposal the power of the truth. And I think what you'll find in the long run is that the truth is a much more powerful weapon. And that's why you're seeing crowds of people in opposition to this. And you're going to see a lot more of them in time. The truth ultimately is what's going to prevail in this argument, and I intend to keep on speaking it. And the truth here is that Soji 123 is a brainwashing program that is confusing our kids and is putting them on potentially deadly pharmaceutical paths. It also tramples religious rights and parental rights. I challenge you, Mr. Fleming, not one of your sophistical assistants, but you, because you're the one who's out there making these statements and sending out veiled threats. So I'm challenging you to come to one of my speaking events, listen, and then debate me afterwards and point out everything that I've said that's untrue. I won't hold my breath waiting for you. Now, Mr. Fleming, you and your friends may envision yourself as did Achilles, namely as the undefeatable hero. But I and the people that I'm working with have identified your weak spots, and Paris is taking aim. You better get ready. I just want to add one final note. The problem with Mr. Fleming and the people at the top of society, including the jackals and the hyenas and the lampreys that are swirling around government, is that you suffer from the confused notion that true power is found in, and I use this in the vernacular, not the religious sense, dharma, or dominance hierarchies. Unfortunately for you, true power is found in bhakti, or supreme devotion to something higher than oneself. Those of us who are devoted to something higher than ourselves, in what Abraham Lincoln called the higher angels of our nature, will continue to speak the truth despite your threats. And we will not cease speaking the truth until SOGI 123 is torn apart and its pieces scattered to the wind. So you make note, Mr. Fleming, we are not going to stop. We are going to keep on speaking, and you're just going to have to deal with us. And maybe, if you had any courage at all, you would come out to one of my public talks and point out to me where I'm lying before you go onto national news and talk to the press and say that we're out here spreading misinformation and lies and threatening us with legal action. Right? I've got a challenge out to you right now. Come to one of my talks. Listen, debate me on stage, point out to everybody there in the audience where I'm lying, where I'm wrong. I know you won't do it. Anyway, that's my prepared statement for our government. Okay, if they think that I'm going to stop speaking the truth, right? And I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody that I'm working with, but I feel like most of them are pretty much on the same page as me in the sense that they're not going to speak or cease speaking the truth either. We're just going to keep on speaking, and no threats are going to stop us. It doesn't matter what kind of threats. So I've gotten physical threats. I've had people threaten to kill me, right? That hasn't stopped me. Threats of sending me to jail from our education minister, those aren't going to stop me either. I'm just going to keep on speaking. What I'd also ask of the government and Mr. Fleming to think about is the fact that I am transgender. Okay, so what am I doing, right? And for the press people who might have tuned in that I sent out notice to, you'd think that maybe you would be interested in why I, as a transgender person, am so bitterly opposed to SOGI 123. Right? I haven't seen a whole lot of interest from the local press as to why I'm in this debate and have been such a vocal opponent of SOGI 123. I do want to sort of take a moment to clarify, now that we're talking about press, and make the press understand who I am and what my affiliations are. So people sometimes say that I'm part of Culture Guard. I'm not part of Culture Guard. I've got nothing to do with Culture Guard. I was invited to speak at one Culture Guard event in Campbell River, and that's pretty much the extent of my involvement with Culture Guard, although we did work with them when we did the protest in Victoria, not directly, sort of indirectly. So I'm not part of Culture Guard. I'm an independent speaker. The group that I've been working with the most is the Canadian Christian Lobby. It's a very new group. I don't, at this time, I haven't signed any contracts with the Canadian Christian Lobby. I'm not officially associated with them at this time. I do work with them. I am doing work for them in terms of writing and communications, and we have discussed whether or not at some point I might actually come under the employment of the Canadian Christian Lobby. But at this time I have no official agreements with anybody. At this time I'm still an independent speaker, although I certainly support the Canadian Christian Lobby and everything that they're trying to do in terms of SOGI 123. So I just want people to be clear on what my status is at this time. I hope this makes it to. It's going to go onto my. It's going to go onto my Facebook video page, and it's going to stay there. So I hope that this video will make it to Mr. Fleming at some point. I mean, he's targeting and specifically isolating public speakers in British Columbia who he thinks are spreading misinformation, and I happen to be one of the. I would argue one of the most prominent speakers and most active speakers in BC right now. So as one of those people that he's targeting, I just want to put out a challenge to him. So if you're Mr. Truth there, Rob Fleming, if you're Captain Truth and interested in protecting the public from false information, come on out to one of my public talks. Listen, and then point out to everybody where my lies are. It'd be a perfect opportunity. But like I say, I don't want to hear from one of your sophistical assistants. Okay, I want to hear from you, because you're the one who's in front of the press making all of these comments. You think you know so much about what's going on. Actually, I don't think you know squat. I don't think you know hardly anything about SOGI 123. which begs the question of where are you getting your information and why are you pushing it so hard, right? What is driving this? Is this like a social engineering agenda? Is this being pushed by LGBTQ radicals? Is this a product of the pharmaceutical industry who's making a ton of cash on this? Like, what is driving this? Like, I don't believe you know hardly anything about SOGI 123, except for maybe some of the stuff that your advisors are telling you, and you certainly don't know a whole lot about the whole transgender identity thing. I've been involved in this debate extensively, using almost every spare minute of my time for the last year and a half. So I'm more than capable of defending my positions, and I'm more than willing to debate you, Mr. Fleming, in a public venue on this issue. Again, I won't hold my breath. But if you're going to be out there slandering people such as myself, I think it would be fair for you to consider that. Yeah, I would love to speak to the press. They're not too interested in me. Like, this is what we saw at the Victoria protest, is that they pretty much tried to pretend I didn't exist. I didn't get a whole lot of coverage in the press. CBC in Kelowna gave me a few minutes to talk on the air, which is not nearly enough time to be able to make an intelligent position on a very complicated issue. But that was one of the first instances of a major media outlet actually giving me the time of day. I encourage everybody to listen to my Apologetics Canada interview that I did. I thought that was a very informative interview that went very well. Yeah, I'm willing to talk to the press about this if they want to cover it fair, right? Because they're always manipulating things. I mean, look what happened with this Richmond protest, right? News 1130, dozens of people. Dozens of people. That's what they said. And they said 60 people signed up to speak. So they're focusing on these low numbers, right? They could have tried to give an accurate number, like an absolute number. They could have said, 500, 600, however many people were there, right? But they didn't do that, right? They said dozens. Right? They could have said hundreds of people, but no, that would give the wrong impression. They had to say dozens. So this is how the media continually manipulates things. And we saw here again when Mr. Fleming released his statement there, threatening people like me, that instead of trying to focus on what people like I am saying out there, and he should really listen to me because I am transgender. I mean, what makes you think that I'm trying to demonize transgender people? I'm not trying to do that. I am trying to address some sort of hard truths that are related to transgender identity that need to be addressed, but I'm not trying to demonize them. So you would think that people would be interested in hearing from me. Hopefully that will change. We have heavy-duty propaganda and information spinning going on out there. So, I mean, whoever would have thought that we would get to a point in history where we were seriously listening to people saying that men are women. Okay? Men are not women. So I am not, nor could I ever be a woman, right? And when I talk about Morgan Auger, I say that Morgan is a man. And I will refer to him as he and him and stuff because he's a man. Now, that's not an insult. Okay, that's a recognition of physical reality. I have a right to recognize that. In some cases, I have a duty to recognize that, right? But it shouldn't be regarded as an insult. Now, I did a talk fairly recently, and there were some transgender youths there who got really offended by me referring to Morgan as he and him and a man. And they said that that was misgendering. I don't know what misgendering is. Like, what even is misgendering? When I say that Morgan Auger is a man, that says nothing about his gender at all, right? That's a comment about his sex, right? To identify somebody's sex is to say nothing about their gender. Gender is a set of rules and expectations and forms of dress, like makeup and stuff like that. These are all sort of things that are attached to a sex by a particular culture. It varies from culture to culture, what is expected of a particular sex. But when you say that somebody is a man, or when you say that somebody is a woman, you're saying nothing about their gender whatsoever. It's actually really difficult to identify gender, and they had this problem with Bill C-16 in trying to define what transgender was, right? It's something that's very difficult to identify. But we need to get this straight, because this is part of the language games that they're playing. They're conflating gender and sex. Okay, these are totally different terms. We need to understand that sex refers to your biological reality in terms of whether you're male or female. And this is determined at the chromosomal and DNA level. That's sex, okay? Gender is, long hair, it's eyeliner, it's, maybe skirts and types of jewelry and stuff like that. This is all gender. But you don't identify gender using man or woman or boy or girl. That's incorrect use of the term. Anybody can take on the opposite gender. So anybody can take on all of the roles and expectations and forms of dress of another gender. That's easy to do. I do it. Anybody can do it. I am transgender. That's something that's really easy to do. But nobody can become the opposite sex, right? You cannot, there's never been a single instance in history where we've seen a man changed into a woman. We've seen them physically butchered and mutilated, and drugged up on various things, but we've never seen somebody actually turn from a man to a woman. That's not something that's possible, right? But if you conflate the two words, gender and sex, you can see why we now have men claiming to be women. It's because they've conflated those two words. So we need to keep those separate. Unfortunately, one of the things that they're doing with Soji right now in school is they are deliberately conflating those two words to foster this environment of confusion. And this is one of the things that I address in my presentations, that I'm hoping Mr. Fleming will come down from his high horse and listen to, and maybe engage me, and then maybe in a public forum, see if he's got the bravery, we'll say, to say that I'm a liar, right? Come say that to me in a public presentation, right? We'll have a little debate. It's not going to happen, though, because people who push deception and lies are terrified by the truth, and they will not allow themselves to be brought into a forum where truth is at the forefront. So I don't expect to hear from or see Mr. Fleming. But, it's easy to find me out there. Just go to my blog. You can go to my blog or my Facebook, and you can contact me if Mr. Fleming wants to attend one of my presentations. By all means, I welcome you. So yes, Bill Walcott. I need to talk about the Bill Walcott thing, because people keep asking me about Bill Walcott and what my position is there and what my role is there. I'm not sure what my position is 100% on Bill Walcott. Bill and I obviously are, even visually you can figure that out, but Bill and I are obviously quite different people and have quite different worldviews. I'd say he's more sensational than me, but only maybe in a political sense. Obviously I can dress up kind of sensational and all, but Bill's kind of sensational in a different way, and that, I guess, is his stick. But I did agree to testify at his tribunal hearing that was brought by Morgane Auger, and testify on behalf of free speech and reality, and talk about some things specific to transgender identity that might be relevant. I said I would do that. I am interested in free speech. Free speech is something that needs to be vigorously defended. Whether or not you agree with what somebody says is irrelevant. As Noam Chomsky said, if you do not support free speech for opinions that you despise, then you really don't support free speech at all. So that's what the speech issues boil down to for me. I'm also trying to support free speech by vocally saying things that I'm not supposed to say, right? Officially not supposed to say, like that Morgane Auger is a man. And I'll say that, and I'll say that to his face if I get the opportunity, because it's a recognition of reality, and it is not offensive. It is a fact. He may not like the fact, but it is a fact. And in a society that is comprised of so many different beliefs. The only way we can maintain order is to make sure all of our beliefs are tethered to physical reality. Right? This sort of takes us to that whole idea of the separation of church and state, which is sort of based on the same thing. The only thing that's going to keep sanity in government, the only thing that's going to keep order, is if everybody is tethered to physical reality, physical, testable, knowable reality, right? So I have a right to physical reality. And the physical reality is that Morgan is a man, just like me. And I actually am of the opinion that transgender-born males, like me, need to come to terms with the fact that they are actually male, and know that that's not it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, it's not a bad thing. That's what you are. So somebody said to me that I'm not trans. Somebody who obviously knows nothing about the definition of the word transgender. This person said to me that I'm not transgender because I identify as a male. I am transgender. You can tell that I'm transgender just by looking at me. Again, this gets back to the fact that anybody can be transgender. So I am transgender. And I don't identify as a male. I am a male, right? This is back to sex and gender again, right? Sex is not something you identify as. Sex is something that you are, right? So I don't identify as a male. I am a male, just like Morgan, right? And we all have a right to physical reality, and we all have a right to demand recognition of physical reality, because that is, in my mind, co-equal with the separation of church and state. Of course, I should be allowed an opinion, Esther. That's getting increasingly difficult these days. And in fact, our Education Minister is implying that my having an opinion might be criminal or something, right? Well, whatever. If Rob Fleming wants to arrest me, come arrest me. Okay, and that's another thing that I wanted to say to Rob Fleming. Okay, so he talks about all of this misinformation. He talks about the hatred that's being spread out there. I happen to know pretty much all of the major speakers who are speaking against SOGI 123 in British Columbia, and none of them are promoting hate. But if you want to charge somebody as a hate criminal or whatever crime you want to charge them with, you come charge me, okay? You come charge me first. You come through me, all right? Because most of what these other people are saying, I've been saying too, okay? So if you want to charge somebody, there's another thing. Show some courage. You come charge me, okay? Whoever you want to charge, I'm going to stand in front of them and ask you to charge me instead. And whatever it is that you want to charge them for, I will repeat what they're saying. Because this is ridiculous, right? Free speech means something. We can't have our government intimidating us, especially when it can be shown that they are misrepresenting the facts, distorting and lying to the public. The public needs to be made, first of all, the public needs to be made aware of that. And that's what we're doing by going out and giving public talks. And after we have made them aware of that, then we all, as a society, need to collectively ask why our government is deliberately deceiving and manipulating us. That is a very serious issue. And if we just roll back a bit to the fact that I said that SOGI 123 was basically the devilish product of the Liberal government, so the previous government here in BC. But then when the new government, the NDP, took power, they sort of just picked up SOGI 123 where the Liberals had left it, and they took it and ran it into the end zone like a football, right? So this is a bipartisan thing. And you see this at the national level too with Bill C-16. So people, again, are painting this as a right and a left thing. Jordan Peterson likes to do this. It's the right versus the left. But when you look at Bill C-16 and you look at the House and you look at the conservatives in the House, not just in the House, but in the Senate, the majority of the MPs in the House who were conservative voted in favor of Bill C-16. A conservative-dominated Senate, the majority of the conservative senators voted in favor. One of the most disturbing rulings in Canadian history, in my opinion, the Trinity Western University ruling, basically said that sexual rights and sexual freedom trump freedom of conscience and freedom of religion. This was a conservative-dominated Supreme Court that reached that conclusion. And that is why I say we don't have a right-left game going on. We have a top-bottom game going on. And people need to wake up to that fact, right? They need to start asking what is going on. We have some sort of mass social engineering going on, and the fact that it carries across the separate governments, like here in BC, from the Liberals to the NDP, suggests that we have corporate powers, whether those are pharmaceutical powers or whatever, behind the scenes that are pushing this agenda on the government. As I said before, I really don't think Rob Fleming knows that much about transgender identity issues. I think he is a parrot. He's a bit of a sock puppet. But yet he's an adamant supporter of it, and he will classify anybody who opposes it as a hate monger and implying that they might even be criminals, right? So what is driving this? People need to ask that and ask, what's going on? Why do both sides of the political spectrum end up voting in favor of these things? Right? We have a systemic problem in our society today, and we need to start asking what is going on. There is something terribly, terribly wrong with our government, right? And we need, as a people, to start looking very closely at what's going on and stop drinking the Kool-Aid and stop being constantly railroaded, or what I call sheepdog, from one camp to another. What I would like Jordan Peterson to do, Andreas, is I would like Jordan Peterson to stand up for the word woman. That's what I would like him to do. Forget Zer and Z, right? This is all, who cares? Like, I don't care about Zer and Z. Now, I know he keeps going, well, it's the forced speech thing. Well, if you want to talk about forced speech, how about forcing me or Bill Walcott, for instance, to say that Morgane Auger is a woman? How about focusing on that instead of Zer and Z, right? He doesn't do that. If he was really interested in something important, he would do that. But he's not going to do that. I don't think I could drag him kicking and screaming into doing that. But the thing is that unlike Zer and Z, the word woman is a very, very important word. All kinds of regulations and laws are built upon a clear understanding of what the word woman means. Up to this point in history, we always knew what the word woman meant. Nobody had to tell us what a woman was. Everybody knew that at sort of an intuitive level, right? Now we've got nuts out there who would have us believe that if we went into a nudist camp, we wouldn't be able to tell the men from the women. That's how absurd it's gotten. And that's why we have all of this insanity, is why we now have men being put in women's prisons and men being allowed into women's rape shelters and stuff. Meanwhile, Mr. Jordan Peterson, zip-lip, he's got nothing to say about all that, right? That's an important word, woman. So if he wanted to be this brave hero that everyone's painting him out to be, the champion who's going to set things straight and offer the antidote to chaos, if he was this big, brave, bold hero for truth, he would come out and defend the word woman. And that's one of the reasons I've been pissed off at him for a long time. He won't defend the word woman. He needs to do that. As long as he doesn't defend the word woman, as far as I'm concerned, he's not a hero. He's a coward. Okay? He's a coward. And people need to stop turning him into a saint until he comes out and defends the word woman, because it is important.